There we go. All right, so we are now on the air. So let me pop over to hello, everybody. If anybody happens to pop in and watch the video, I'm Ben. You know me from Indie Talks, and I'm here with Dennis from Bellwether Games. And in just a few minutes, we're going to start the podcast proper. As soon as I can get the link up for this. How's the weather out where you are right now? Is it as awful as it is here?
It's beautiful. No, it's unseasonably cool, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it's about, I think it maybe hit 80 degrees today.
Wow.
So, yeah, usually it's about 100 degrees here at this time of year. Yeah, we're feeling good.
Yeah, you're worse than me. Yeesh.
Yeah, we're in southern Illinois, so it gets hot.
We have this hurricane coming up on us, apparently, up the East Coast right now. I don't think it's going to make it as far as us, but it's going to make our 4th of July a washout, basically.
That's why the fireworks were canceled or postponed?
Yeah, you know that hurricane thing. People get a little nervous, I guess. Yeah. Okay, it's on the board gaming group, and it's already in my stream. So back to you. All right, let's do like 5 seconds of silence so I can have a good edit point, take a drink, and then we'll kick it off.
Sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Indie Talks, episode number 50. My big episode. For a little while now, I've been doing episodes that are actually higher in number than my age, and this I guess is a milestone episode. It's almost 2 years worth of every other week throwing out a Indie Talks, and I'm flabbergasted that I've gotten this high. I'm also very excited because tonight my guest is Dennis Hoyle from Bellwether Games, who has just launched his first Kickstarter project, almost half a month ago. And what was it? Was it this morning that it became funded, or was it yesterday?
It was right about lunchtime.
Yeah, excellent. So congratulations. You have funded Antidote on Kickstarter, and there's still, by the time this comes out into the general public for consumption, there'll still be like 12 or 13 days left to go ahead and get this thing up to some stretch goals. But we'll get to that in a little bit. We're going to talk a lot about Antidote, talk about the Kickstarter and what folks can get from it. But sure. Dennis, first I want to talk about you. So how did you get into this crazy hobby in the first place? What first brought you to the table?
Yeah, I think I'm probably like most people who are in the industry in that I started playing games when I was a kid, played a lot of Risk. I was frustrated by my inability to beat my dad at Risk or chess, and so I stumbled into European games, European-style games around midway through high school. But I've always been designing games, at least as long as I can remember. I used to design games with Legos.
Yeah.
And then kind of advanced on to some board games after that. Designed, my first war game in high school, and then realized that wasn't really the direction I wanted to go. My first Euro game I played was St. Petersburg. Which I think I picked a good one because that's still my favorite game.
Oh, really? Excellent.
Yeah, we play it probably the most often of any of the games that we have.
Now, let me sidetrack you here for a second, because this is something that's interesting to me. When you talk about favorite games, when gamers talk about favorite games, there's a whole bunch of this new hotness stuff that kind of goes on in the board gaming community. And it's, ooh, this just came out, got to get it. Boom, bring it to the table, play it through. Ooh, this just came out, got to get it. But everybody has their favorite game. How much do you think nostalgia feeds into that?
Good question. I probably. So you're asking like how much does nostalgia feed into the whole hotness, the newness of things?
No, into your favorite game. I'm only asking this really because my favorite game is not a very good game, but it's always going to be my favorite game. It's Talisman. Sure. It's a roll and move game. You get stuck going around the outside of the circle. You spend hours and hours trying to get to the center, and then my wife inevitably wins. But that was one of the first games that I stumbled into.
Sure. Yeah, maybe it does have a bit to play in it. I don't necessarily think back to the first time I played St. Petersburg every time I play it.
Right.
I remember a good feeling, getting a good feeling from it. I think I probably won it the first time I played it, and I win it often, which is I think one of the trademarks of a favorite game for me is one that I can do well in. For me, there's also a special it holds a special place in my heart because I had the opportunity to go to Germany in 2008 with some friends, and we visited Hans im Glück.
Yeah.
There, and so I got a chance to meet Baron Bernhofer, who designed St. Petersburg.
Wow.
Along with some other folks that come in there. They just had a game night, and it was just an amazing experience to be able to go and meet some of those guys and play games with them and that type of thing. So obviously, that's going to hold a place in my heart, just the fact that I'm a designer and that type of thing. So
now, did you just sort of stumble in off the street, or did you arrange this ahead of time, or?
Yeah, we arranged it ahead of time. We were like, we're going to Germany. And this was kind of, 2008 was still, before Kickstarter was kind of taken off. Yeah. So mostly just the major publishers were the ones that were putting out all the games that we were playing. So we're like, well, let's find a publisher in Germany that we can go visit. And Hans im Glück happened to be one that we were familiar with already because we had St. Petersburg. We've been playing it for a couple of years. So emailed them, got a response. They're like, yeah, we don't have a tour or anything like that. Just stop by our office. We're playing games this night, and you're welcome to join us. And so came by. They offered us Carcassonne gummies, and I got to hold the Spiel des Jahres model, in my hand.
Yeah.
Got a picture of that. Got a picture with Baron Bernhofer and everything, and it was obviously a memorable experience, something I won't quickly forget. So.
That's pretty awesome. I don't think there are a lot of people that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of people who can say, yeah, well, we just wandered over to Germany and set up a board game night with one of our favorite publishers and got to sit down and eat gummies and play games. Jeez. Now,
I was fortunate. We were young, so I was an undergrad, so I wasn't really tied down to anything, so we just went over there. So it kind of panned out. I think most people probably don't have that flexibility with their time.
Yeah.
Go over to Germany and hang out. So.
Nice. Is that what prompted you to take the leap into becoming a company and producing board games?
Obviously it's something I considered, when you're an undergrad and you're talking to your academic advisor and you say, well, I want to design board games for a living. They kind of stare at you and they don't really know how to answer it. Nobody really knows how you get into that field, and it's changed, throughout the years. Obviously, nowadays, if somebody asked you that, you would say, well, you need to start looking at Kickstarter, and that's kind of the way you do it. But for me, it was just trying to figure out what is the most practical or most reasonable way to get into the industry, to find my, to do board games for a job full time.
Yeah.
And since I was interested in this, from a pretty young age, it wasn't like I, developed, a lifetime career in something else, and then I just want to do this on the side. This is something I've been trying to get into full time since I entered undergrad school. So. Part of the whole publishing, I think, versus designing is, they're very similar. I think a lot of people who publish are also the designers.
Yeah.
For me, I think it is, I'm probably a little bit impatient. I probably want to, see things happen faster than just handing up a game off to a publisher and then waiting for 6 months to a year, 2 years to 3 years. The second thing is probably, wanting to have my fate in my own hands. Third thing might be hearing and reading a lot of articles and things like that have been talking about how for a designer specifically it's hard to make it full-time, even though you can get some royalties here and there. You really have to have a major hit to be able to make it. So whereas on the publishing side, since you're getting a bigger cut from it, it is actually possible, and obviously people are doing that. So those have all been going into part of my decision as far as that's concerned. One other thing I might mention is just that being on the publisher side of the house, you also have to kind of grow a lot more in the skills that you're using. There's a lot of different skills that go into designing games, obviously, but then there's add to that a whole another host of skills that go into the publishing process. So if it doesn't pan out someday, it's better to say, well, it didn't pan out as a designer, and I have these skills. Versus, well, it didn't pan out as a publisher, and I was publishing games for a couple of years, so now I think it's a little bit more lucrative as far as kind of marketing myself to a different career when if I ever have to move on from this. So.
And I think I want to talk a little bit about Bellwether games specifically, but I think that's a really interesting point, and it's one that comes up fairly often, is whether you're planning on just going into doing a Kickstarter to make one game and that's it, you just want to make your game and you're going to get out, or whether you're saying, that's it, I'm going to make a game publishing company, this is going to be my job, and I'm going to go into Kickstarter, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to raise the money some other way and start a publishing company. It's a job. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, and it takes a very specific set of skills and almost Liam Neeson-like focus. Specific set of skills, and I'm going to go to China and get this thing published. Because you need to be good at numbers, you need to be good at research, you need to be really good at talking to other people and finding out, quotes and finding out how these things work. And the one thing that you have to have that I absolutely do not have myself is a logical, organized mind for putting all this stuff together logistically in a way that works. And I think that's where most Kickstarters probably fall down, is people set them up and they haven't taken into account everything. There's the shipping costs, and there's the manufacturing costs, and then there's the distribution and getting it into warehouses or into stores if that's what they plan on doing with it and all that stuff. So that's a pretty big leap. Do you think, well, first, let's talk about Bellwether Games.
Sure.
Why call it Bellwether Games?
Well, we were looking for a name. Myself and my business partner, we were trying to come up with something that was unique, that could become a brand fairly easily, that could, we could find an image that would be fun, but also professional. He actually found out, he discovered this term called bellwether. And what is a bellwether? Well, a bellwether is a ram with a bell around its neck that kind of walks around and the flock follows the sound of the bell.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuck out to me pretty quickly, first of all, because this image of the ram is really unique.
Yeah.
And kind of fun. So I immediately was starting to think of different logos and things like that, as well as kind of the whole premise of this is a leader, like the ram is leading the flock, people are following it. That makes business sense as far as talking about what is your what's unique about your company. Well, we're a leader. Our slogan is basically following us in the quest to kind of find the perfect game, or seek after the perfect game. So so that stood out to me, and that's where Bellwether came from. I've since learned that about 99% of people either can't spell Bellwether,
yes,
or have no idea what it is. But that's okay with me. I like it being different. I like it being unique. I feel like at some point, the uniqueness of a brand kind of is better than that element. And I think if we kind of get enough followers or get enough people who know what the brand is, that'll be fine. So
absolutely. And I think 90% of the time you're right 100% of the time, because I knew what a bellwether was, but I had every single time I sit down to spell it, my fingers go into memory muscle thing, and I'm talking about the weather and not about
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have both URLs reserved, so we have Bellwether spelled correctly and spelled incorrectly.
See, that's the logical part that I consistently fail at, is what if somebody misspells this thing and goes so now Antidote on Kickstarter doing awesome, but that's not your first game. So when did Bellwether officially become a company, and when did you put out your first game?
Well, I guess the first published game that I've designed, because I've designed several before that one, was Dropsite, and Dropsite was a card game that I put together. Probably the fastest game I ever designed. At my kitchen table, it took about an hour and a half or hours, I'm not sure. It was one of those games where I sat there, I played it, didn't work, played it, didn't work, played it, didn't work. Then made the right rule changes, and suddenly it clicked, and I felt like this is like a working mechanism. It's like, it felt to me a little bit like a light bulb, where there's probably 1,000 different configurations, and then suddenly you get the right configuration and it lights up, and there it is. And most games are like that, but it's not as easy with bigger games to figure out where that moment is. But with Dropsite, since it was such a small game, it was almost immediately noticeable. Like I knew it was there. In Dropsite, it's basically a 52 card deck. You're delivering packets of humanitarian aid to people who are in need. As you're playing cards on the table, other players are covering up those cards very quickly. So there's this sense of urgency and kind of pushing your luck. You're reserving cards for yourself that have to match the cards that are on the table, but the cards on the table are getting covered up quickly. So there's a lot of little risks you have to take along the way to try to score big. I think it's a lot of fun. It ended up winning the 2010 Premio Archimede special prize for best card game. So it was ranked 7th overall at that competition in 2010, which is hosted in Venice at one of the universities. The University of Venice, I think, is what it is.
Yeah.
So that was obviously a huge moment for me, just seeing it win. And then part of that prize was they sent me 1,000 copies of the game.
Nice.
Actually for free. They also, realized the artwork for me, so I got the opportunity to work with a professional artist and go through that process. Then I got the opportunity to to work with Cartamundi was the actual manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
Cartamundi was based in Belgium, so I got an opportunity to work with them. And then they shipped the games to me, and when their games were about halfway across the ocean, they're like, "Oh, and you're gonna have to pay the shipping fee of $1,000." So that was a moment as well. and then once they arrive on shore, United States, then you have to work with customs to get them into the United States, and work with the shipping agent and the customs agent, and so these are obviously not things I thought about when I designed the game and sent it over to Italy to get competition. But for me, it was a great experience because now I've had this experience of working with these people and kind of seeing what some of these hidden costs are, so that I can do a better job planning for Antidote and bringing Antidote from China to the United States and that type of thing. So, so that's what happened with that. And
there's nothing like a trial by fire too to just get you, right up to speed as fast as you possibly can.
There's nothing worse than kind of sitting there and be like, how am I going to get this money to get it through customs and shipped to me? And I'm just a graduate student at this point. So
so you're made out of money at that point.
Right. Exactly.
When you talk about that moment when you're sitting at your table and all of a sudden it just clicked, it dinged. A lot of folks have that moment who are in game design. I've had that moment before. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's addicting? Do you think you want to feel that again?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what drives you to keep pushing a game forward when you've played it 1,000 times and it's not working. You're like, surely it's here somewhere. I mean, it's like trying to uncover a gem.
Right.
Hidden, and you keep looking for it, and you try different tools to get there, and then sometimes it's just not there. Or you need somebody else to come and look for it because you can't, or you need a team of people or whatever it is. So yeah, I definitely think it's addicting. Definitely one of the things that kind of pushes me to continue to design.
Absolutely. I'm always wondering why designers keep doing what they do, because unless you're extremely fortunate, you're not going to be driving around in a Ferrari with a huge house being a game designer or a game publisher. You can make a decent living at it, but there's got to be something to keep folks coming back and doing it again and again until they have some moderate success. And I'm always interested in what that little ding is like for different people. I think you described it very succinctly, too, when you talked about it just like a gong going off, and you knew it. So that was Dropsite, which was a trial for you, I'm sure, to get over, but it must have been awesome to see 1,000 copies of your game. Yeah. I mean, what was that like opening up? What is it, on a crate? Did you have to truck it over to where you live?
Well, my father-in-law helped with that. He was able to find a place to get them all unloaded. He put them on his truck, and then I was able to go down and pick up a set. The boxes come in sets of 12, so I opened the first box of 12, and as soon as I was taking pictures of the box itself, and then I was taking pictures of the 12 copies inside the box, and then I was taking one out and taking a picture of it with the shrink wrap on, and then you know how that is.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
And then all that.
So what happens after Dropsite?
So what happens after Dropsite is I'd already been thinking about starting Bellwether Games, and that was just a moment I was like, well, this is a game company kickstart, before the term Kickstarter became popular. So I started reaching out to, I was in business school at that point, reaching out to people at the Entrepreneurship Center and in business school, and they provided me a lot of support. We had a launch party for the game. A lot of people from the community came in. My wife made a Dropsite cake, which looked really great. I can share a picture with you later.
Nice.
And then I started the long process, really, of working on a business plan, working through the filings with the government, the state, doing all the research as far as the taxes are concerned, looking into getting a website, trademarking the brand, all of that, and being in school full time at the same time, obviously became a slow process. We actually managed to get the company registered and get the website up and running by May of 2011. So I consider that the start date. And it's been a slow process since then, simply because I've been working full time, because Bellwether Games doesn't, and Dropsite in particular doesn't bring enough money for us to support ourselves. So since then, I've been working full time in a job that takes a lot of time. Both during the day and after hours as well. So during whatever time I can, I continue to work on games designing. Antidote was one that I designed. just in the last couple of years here, and then there's obviously a couple other games on the play as well.
Sure.
But really, it was just looking for now, with the business, what is that thing that's really going to help us to take off or take that next step? And I've been doing research on Kickstarter for a couple of years. I've been following several of the companies on Kickstarter that have been doing it for a couple of years, and trying to find. I'm always wanting to be unique and be different, and say, well, surely there's some way we can be different at this. But kind of realizing as well that a big part of being successful with this is being the same as well as a lot of people have been. So the fact that so many people are using Kickstarter right now is not just to say we're not being unique, but to say, well, this is a kind of a tested and tried way to be successful at producing and getting the funds you need. And then we can find ways to kind of be unique with the games that we're putting out there. Put games that are unique and fun and have a brand of their own. So that's where we're at right now. And Antidote was just kind of popped out to me as the game that should be the first one.
Yeah. Now, that's a great segue into Antidote, because I really want to talk about the game and about how the Kickstarter is going. Before we jump right into that, I just want to ask you real quick. A lot of folks who listen to this podcast are fledgling designers or folks who are really looking to break into the industry or start their own companies. If you had to give somebody, from your standpoint, one piece of advice in jumping into their first Kickstarter, from where you're standing right now, what would that be?
Well, I don't know if I can give you just one, but
two, maybe three.
Two or three, yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is probably to read the Stonemaier Games blog. I'm not sure if you've read that. I'm sure you've
absolutely.
That's a great one. Listen to the Impressions vidcast with Richard Bliss and Aldo Giazzi. Read the resources that James Matthew puts out there on Facebook. Join all the Kickstarter groups on Facebook. Get involved in the community. Start seeing what other people are doing. Follow Kickstarter projects. Something I wish I would have done more of would just be to support at the dollar level.
Sure.
As many projects as you can, because that way you get to follow more closely how they do it and what they're doing, and then you'll see what works and what doesn't work for them. So that's a lot of different things wrapped into one. I think mainly it's just research, right? It's starting to read and do your research and your homework, so you know what to expect. I'm naturally somebody who does a lot of research and is kind of hesitant to pull the trigger. So that was easy for me to take 2.5 years and read people's experiences with Kickstarter and not actually put the game out there myself. But I feel really I'm really glad that I have taken the time to do it, because I've noticed that obviously when you're running the project, there's a lot of questions that come in from people. Yeah. And if you're not able to kind of answer those questions in a way that's professional and kind of shows that you know what you're talking about, then I think that probably puts a damper on the Kickstarter project pretty quickly. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to answer most of those questions pretty easily from all the research I've been doing. So I don't know when that moment is to say that it's time to pull the trigger, but definitely start off with getting that research done. Yeah. And there's so many resources out there. It's hard not to find something. I struggle stopping myself from reading. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, because 5 years ago there was nothing out there, nothing about starting your own Kickstarter. But I've been really almost astounded and very pleased with the amount of information and openness that folks who are running their own companies, who possibly could end up being your competition, although it seems to be a very friendly competition in this world.
Right, yeah.
Just giving you advice freely to anybody and putting it up in the public domain for folks to read. So I think you did your homework pretty well, because I've seen larger companies with more games under their belt fund on day 30 out of a 31-day Kickstarter, and you're at day 16, 17, and you're already funded. So I think that bodes very well for what you put into this, and also how you've answered those questions. And also talking to a whole bunch of other publishers, they said that the first person that they hire after they started paying themselves is somebody to handle their public relations and answer all those questions, because that is the most time-consuming thing they've said. It just people coming and coming.
Right, I get back from my day job, and it's like, well, here's an hour and a half, 2 hours just answering all the comments from the. So, yep.
So, Antidote, you chose that as your first Kickstarter, and I think with good reason, because it looks like an amazing game. You have a watch it play video on the Kickstarter itself, and if you just go to Kickstarter and search for Antidote, it'll be the first thing that pops right up. So, explain to our listeners how the game works and how you play.
Sure. Antidote is a game where you are a laboratory scientist working in a lab with a team of scientists, and as usually happens, at least in science fiction, something goes terribly wrong, and that terrible gas that you were hoping, you set it up in the middle of the room, to look at, but you didn't want it to escape its container. Well, that happened, and now you're all infected with a deadly disease, and you kind of have to work together to figure out what the antidote is. But to make matters worse, you're all working on, possible antidotes, formulas that could serve as a reliable antidote, but none of you know which one could possibly be it because it's a double-blind study, etc. And you're not sure that there's enough of the antidote to go around, so you're kind of in it for yourself. You're trying to make sure that you know what the antidote is, so you can drink it and live and survive this deadly scenario. And along the way, if you can help some other people, maybe that doesn't bother you. But at the same time, you're looking out for yourself first. So this is kind of a look at human nature a little bit, and the selfishness that we have when it comes down to when our life is on the line. In the game, it's pretty simple to play. It's similar to Clue in that in Clue you remove some of the cards from the game. It's a deduction style game. So in Clue you remove the wrench and Mr. Green and the library, and then you'd know by looking at all the rest of the cards who done it basically.
Sure.
In Antidote there are 7 formulas. You take one of the formulas out of the game, and so by looking at the rest of the formulas you can figure out which one is the antidote. Obviously, that's easier said than done because we're splitting up all the information and sharing it between the rest of the players. And now you have to, bribe, negotiate, coerce, be silent, and just observe with the rest of the players until you can get enough information that you think you know what it is. And to make matters worse again, there's kind of this time limit that's imposed by the rest of the players. The game is played over several rounds where one of the options on your turn is to force all players to discard a card. And so whenever that card is discarded, you have one fewer card in your hand to rely on. That could be the antidote.
Sure.
So
I think that's a neat mechanic. I was watching the Watch It Play video and picturing playing that as well. And I like games that introduce that kind of stress where it's out of your hands whether or not somebody's going to force you to do something, and then you have to adjust your strategy to deal with that. Absolutely, and that's one of my favorite mechanics is this kind of player-controlled length. Dropsite has that too, where the game ends whenever somebody plays this final pile. So you never know when the game is going to end. You could theoretically go on forever, until somebody actually plays it. And same thing in Antidote, like you could continue to kind of pass around the table until somebody discards that final card or forces everybody else to discard. And I love the sense of urgency. I love the the nervousness, the stress that's involved with it. It's a fun stress. It doesn't make you feel, it doesn't make you, sweat or anything like that. But it really keeps you coming back for more, and it pushes you to keep on playing, which I really like that feeling in a game. Versus we're just sitting here waiting for the game to end. I like that. So, I guess. What else was I saying about Antidote? So the other option you have on your turn is you can also pass cards around the table. You can initiate kind of trades with players as well. And then there's a kind of a sinister card called a syringe, which allows you to steal a card from another player. So those things kind of all got combined together to make about 15 or 20 minutes of backstabbing and trying to deceive people and figure out what the antidote is. And usually at the end, I tell people that if you're going to enjoy the game, you probably need to be comfortable with at least a little bit of uncertainty. Sure.
It's not a game where there's one optimal strategy that you can just find, because you can use all of your powers of deduction and get everything right as far as that's concerned, and then realize that one of the pieces of information you were relying on was something else that somebody lied to you about.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of be willing to make a guess sometimes at the end and not be 100% certain that you know what the antidote is. And it feels great when you get it right, and when you get it wrong, it just gives you more incentive to try to play again. So.
And it's correct me if I'm wrong, but some people can get it more right than others too, based on the number on their card. So if you're playing multiple rounds,
Right. Yeah. There's a little bit of that scoring mechanism put in there. So there's numbers on each card. So several players could get the antidote, but one player could kind of have the highest overall score, and you can keep score over several rounds that way. Yeah.
So it's almost a cooperative game in some aspects, in that you all have to at least play off of each other, and try not to screw the other people so much that they're going to screw you so much that you're going to lose the game. And I imagine it also varies wildly based on the personality of the other players too.
It does. It does, yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with it, and that's one of the challenges that we've had with playtesting it, is because people have different experiences, because every game group kind of approaches it differently.
Yeah.
We really kind of forgiving game group, and we help each other out. And then there's one of us that's kind of the backstabber, and he ends up running away with it. Or are we really cynical, or looking for it? We're all kind of sitting there trying to find this optimal strategy, and then it's really hard to pass information that way, and we all die every time. So
Right.
It helps to loosen up a little bit when you're playing the game.
Sure.
But I think you can enjoy it either way.
And there's nothing explicit in the rules too that says, if I say to you, we're playing a game, and I say, well, I have this purple card, and it's a 3 purple card, and I want to see what you have. I wanted to see if you have one of the serums or something in a pipette or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll trade you this card, and you trade me that one. You say, yeah, sure. So I hand you my card, and you hand me your card, but it's not the card you told me you'd hand me.
Right, exactly.
Explicit in the rules that says, oh, no, you can't cheat like that. So there's also a little bit of trust, or well, how much can I push, my goodwill on this person, or their goodwill towards me too.
Yeah, totally. The working title of this game was actually "Trust Me." That's how I planned on the theme. So there's a lot of, here, take this card. You should keep this one, and well, why should I keep that one? You should trust me on this one. And then I kind of evolved into, let's make this trade. Well, okay, I'll give you an X card if you give me a next card, and well, how can I know you're gonna tell me the truth? Well, you just answer that one.
There's a couple of things that immediately struck me about this game that I really like. My first is I'm going through sort of a fascination with short, quick games. I love being able to. I don't have a lot of time to game, really. It's when I can organize all my friends to get together, and all of our kids are cooperating and all that stuff. Yeah. So it's great for me to be able to get in 6 or 7 different titles in a 4-hour night, rather than play a 3-hour game and maybe get one other thing in there. I like the fact that there's a lot of replayability in it as well. We could get 3 games of this in here, and whoever gets the top score wins, and still finish probably in under an hour. With my group, it's very backstabby, so it'll probably be well under an hour, and nobody would win. But it's also a game that will allow me to, say, play one game with my kids and play it almost an entirely different way than I would play with my adult gaming group. Yeah. Because if I played it with my kids, it would be a helping sort of cooperative. Let's see if we can get everybody through this whole thing. But if I play it with my friends, I'm playing for me. Absolutely. So I like that aspect of that. When you started designing this game, was that initially built in, or is that something that you tried to arrive at, or did you just sort of have that bell moment and get there? Well, we were really intentional about all sorts of things about the game and the structure of it. I would say that thinking that this is a game that could be played with kids just differently than it could be played with this game group over here was not necessarily something that we were thinking of. Sure. I haven't really been targeting this game at children and families, just because there's a lot of discernment that goes beyond the deduction that's useful in becoming a really strategic player. But the deduction itself, I think, has a lot of application for family games and things like that. That your children would enjoy it. Just as far as trying to figure out what the antidote is, and if you're helping each other along, I think that they would enjoy it as well. So, but definitely the intentionality was built in that kind of every game would be different, that the different players you're playing with have a significant impact on how the game is played, because a lot of times you're playing the players just as much as you're playing the cards in the game. So yeah, so definitely. And this. Well, first I want to talk about your comparison to Clue at the very beginning, and I want to make something clear from my perspective too. My kids enjoy Clue. That's not my favorite game, but it is a deduction game, and it's probably just because I've been coerced into playing it so many times. This game is also a deduction game, but it strikes me as far cooler than Clue, and far easier to play and far more enjoyable and strategic. You really are playing off the emotions of the other players and how far you can get through it. So when you design a game, and maybe not just Antidote, but when you're looking at any of the games that you're working with, do you normally arrive at mechanics first, or does a theme sort of pop into your head, or do you sort of work on them both at the same time? A mixture of both, or one before the other. This one was not the theme first. Antidote was first kind of came out of this concept of I want people to have to kind of make a decision based on this gut instinct, or like make a decision at the end of the game kind of based on whatever information they have, kind of make a
gut decision. You don't have all the information, and also at the same time to have to kind of watch the actions of other players.
Yeah.
While maybe hearing something different out of their mouth. So this kind of came out of like a watch what I do and don't listen to what I say kind of idea.
Yeah.
And then have to make a decision based on faith in the end. So that was kind of the tenet behind it, and then it evolved and changed and went through a couple different iterations, and I landed on the Antidote theme after after kind of getting far enough along with it. So, but there are other games where obviously the theme comes first, in my head, or some games where it's a mechanic that kind of takes hold. So this one was more of just like a feel, like wanting to kind of experience this sense of like, I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm watching something different, and what do I rely on here? So.
Yeah, and one of my favorite games to play with my wife and people who are sort of new to gaming is Bonanza. And a lot of that is interacting with other people and making trades and stuff like that. And I kind of see this game also sort of filling that niche as well, because it looks like I could teach it to somebody in 5 minutes. Boom, boom, boom. Here's how you play. This is what we're going to do. We'll go through a round, and then we're off and running. Unlike Bonanza, though, it's not going to take me an hour and a half to get through through one game. So I would highly encourage people to head over to the Kickstarter and take a look at the Watch It Play video as well, because that's about 16, 17 minutes of in-depth, here's how you play the game, and it's not the card art, obviously, that's going to be in the finished product, but you did a great job of explaining everything. So popping over to the Kickstarter, here's another thing that was really attractive to me, which is I happen to live in the United States, and for $16 I could get a copy of this game. And that's really hard to argue with. That's almost, well, for a lot of gamers, that's an impulse buy. $16. That's not even a 20. Yeah, let's pick it up and see what it's like. If you're in Canada, it's 21, and if you're outside, it's 26 for worldwide shippers, which again is not a terribly large amount to pay for this game. And you can also up your pledge by, what is it, $8, and grab a copy of Dropsite as well, too, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So instead of pledging 16, you pledge 24, and then you're going to get a copy of Dropsite. And then you have some other higher levels as well. Can you talk a little bit about the premium backer level? Yeah,
the premium backer level is, we're just going to kind of feature your name. We're going to put your name in the rulebook as a premium backer. We're also going to put your name on the website along with a picture saying you're a premium backer, and we're going to send you the copy of the game anywhere in the world as well. So this is kind of for those people that want to have just an extra stake in the Kickstarter, and then also want to kind of have some longevity on our website and in the game and that type of thing. So yeah, we added that one in for those people that just kind of wanted to be a little bit more of a bigger part of it, just at the base level.
Yeah, and I should mention at the time of this recording, too, you have a limit of 25. 17 folks have already backed at that level. That's only 8 left. It may be less when this hits the airwaves. So if that's something that you're interested when you're listening to this, head on over there and check it out soon, because I may not be there anymore. And then you have a couple of, you have a 6-pack level at $75 and $115 for a 10-pack with some additional shipping for other countries. And then you have the Antidote Hangout for $150. Tell me what that's about.
Yeah, simply it's just what it says. We're going to hang out with you online. We'll send you the game, and then we'll sit with you for an hour or a little bit more than an hour, and then we'll teach you the game if you want us to teach it to you, or we'll just we could kind of hypothetically even play it with you. It's a pretty cool game from that standpoint. We'll just hang out and get to know you better. So that one we haven't found much people have chosen that one yet, but it's an option there if you're interested.
And then there's the Chemical Researcher at $300, and there's 4 of those total.
And then the Biochemical Researcher as well, at $500. Those are similar. And in each of those levels, we're going to have you have the opportunity to name one of the formulas in the game. And we have one backer at the $500 level right now. We've been working with him pretty closely. Been talking a lot about his interest in the game and some of the different ideas he has for the name and that type of thing. And that's been really fun. And the ideas that we've generated so far for some of the names are great. He's kind of tied it more to he's tied it to the medical community, the medical theme. And so that's been a really interesting take on the game and a lot of fun work with. I hope that we get a couple other backers at that level. Obviously, not only because of the funding, but also because it's been fun to see some of the creativity that comes out of that collaborative effort and naming some of the formulas. So
excellent. So let's touch stretch goals here. You've reached your funding level, 12,500. You're a little over 13,000 right now. The first stretch goal is at 17,000. And go ahead, tell us about that.
Sure. That we have 3 lab assistant cards, which I'm actually in the process of writing the update and sending that out this evening. The lab assistant is something that was requested by a lot of our playtesters, which was an extra kind of player aid. It's not necessary to play the game to have the player aid, but some people have mentioned that it'd be useful to be able to see all the different formulas that are in the game, along with a brief summary of all the different options you have on your turn.
Yeah.
And since it's pretty small, since there's only 7 formulas and there's only really 3 options on your turn, it's easy to fit on 1 card. So we're adding 3 of those cards to the game for anybody that wants to use them. Those are already designed, so there'll be a picture of that coming out in the update that I sent out tonight.
Excellent.
And then after that, we have the bonus syringe card.
Yeah.
We're actually going to have 2 bonus syringe cards now. So the first one was kind of a mistake card. I went through so many different iterations of the game and different combinations of cards that when I released the Kickstarter, I hadn't edited it. There's actually only 6 antidotes or 6 syringe cards instead of 7. So instead of taking it out of the game and kind of feeling like a bait and switch, we decided to add in a bonus syringe. So that was redesigned to look like a kind of an old Greek syringe out of, I don't know, almost steampunk kind of looking.
Yes.
And then we're going to add another syringe at that $20,000 level that will be more of it'll kind of have more of a Kickstarter look to it. So it'll be an extra syringe you can use in the game, and neither one are needed for the game, but both can be added or kind of usually with the rest of the syringes. It's just kind of a fun thing to look at and to have as part of your kind of Kickstarter edition that you're getting.
And then level 4, the last one that's revealed to us on the Kickstarter so far, is at $29,000.
Yep.
And with that, you get some ID cards, 7 ID cards, and some placebo cards.
Right. Yeah, and that's this is kind of where we get into the expansion type territory, where the cards we're adding add to the gameplay. One of the fun things about Antidote is that it is incredibly expandable as far as the different variants. And if you've been reading the comments, you've already noticed that some people have been offering some kind of variants to the gameplay, and I've been getting messages about it too. And they're spot on. I mean, they've come up with stuff that we've already thought about as far as how to expand the game. The first one, the ID badges relate to kind of putting you in the ownership seat of one of the formulas. Because as a lab scientist, you're working on one of the formulas in the lab, and so this ties you to that formula in a way that you are going to suffer loss if somebody else ends up choosing the formula that you were responsible for. So you have kind of an extra objective of making sure that people are not picking the one that you were working on, unless of course that one happens to be the antidote. So there's again a little bit of a balance there. And it also adds the placebo card, which is it's actually more sinister than the syringe, because the placebo card is a card that you can discard face down, which doesn't sound like much, but when you're playing the game, you'll see just how much impact that a face down card that's not an X card can have as far as the gameplay is concerned. So that's
in a deduction game, the last thing you want as another player is to have somebody else put something down face down, and now don't know what that is, because that makes it just that much harder to find the right antidote.
Exactly. And in the game, the X cards are typically played face down, so the placebo card then it looks like an X card that you're usually trying to grab with the syringe. So that's a fun card that we came up with a long time ago and really wanted to include it in the game. Didn't feel like it really fit in the base game.
Yeah.
So we made sure as part of that stress, the first kind of expansion stretch goal.
Now I want to touch on something that somebody had mentioned in the comments, and then that you had responded to as well. And it's about how the stretch goals are configured based on price. And this is one of those things that I kind of wanted to highlight, because I want my listeners to understand what goes into building a game like this and some of the hidden pitfalls that folks may fall into if they haven't done this before. So the first stretch goal, 17,000. That brings the total deck size up to 59 cards. Second stretch goal, $3,000 more than that. Now you're talking 60 cards. The next stretch goal, it's only 10 more cards, but it's $9,000 more. Why is that?
Right, and this is a great point, and I really appreciate the comment that was made on the Kickstarter page, because it's a totally fair comment. It's like, why do 3 cards cost this much money? Why does it cost this much? And kind of my response to that is, well, first of all, we're already taking, just by reaching the funding level, we were already taking a loss, so to speak. We've kind of subsidized the cost of creating the game out of our own funds. So some of the stretch goals, those earlier ones, are really just sort of recouping some of those costs and getting to a point where we're not losing quite so much on the project.
Sure.
But also it relates to what you mentioned, the 59 cards versus the 60 cards. So when you're working with a manufacturer and getting quotes, you have options for different size cards, and they're going to quote you based on the number of cards that fit on a sheet. So if you're buying an Antidote, will be bridge size cards, which is 2.25 inches by 3 inches. I don't know if anybody cares about that, but there are 60 cards. There you go. There are 60 cards that fit on the sheet. And in working with Panda in particular, we learned that additional card, moving on to the next sheet, going from 60 cards to 61 cards, is you pay a significant portion of the second sheet, right, even though you're not using the second sheet. And I don't exactly know why that is. It's part of the manufacturing process and what costs them money. So really what we were wanting to do is get to a place where we could offer the kind of the expansionary goals without taking too much of a loss, obviously. Yeah. But in order to get there, we have to kind of take steps. And so we had a couple other cards we could add before getting to 60 cards. So we chose the player aid as well as that bonus syringe card. And so yeah, those 3 extra cards don't necessarily cost $5,000 to make those extra 3 cards, but those are stepping stones to help us as a group to get to 29,000, where we can then, after 29,000, we can begin adding more stretch goals for kind of a less at smaller increments and move up faster at that point. So so I definitely get the concern. I see what people would say, well, it doesn't cost $5,000 to create 3 cards. Well, you're right, it doesn't cost that much to add them. But we want, as a group, to kind of be able to get to that point where we can continue to expand the game. And the fun thing with the Antidote project is that every stretch goal we reach is included in every game that's going out to the backers. So you haven't, if you've bought or if you pledged for a copy of the game, you've gotten the deluxe edition. Everything is going to be included in it. So all we need to do is just get to those stretch goals, and you'll get more in the game. Which when I was planning and researching and looking at the Kickstarter project, that's one thing that I personally felt really strongly about, was that you don't have to pledge more to get more in the game.
I agree with you 100%.
Right. So
yeah, I like that.
Which is good, but unfortunately that means that we also had to ask for a little bit more for the pledges, so that whenever we add more cards, the weight's going to increase, and then the shipping costs are going to go up when the weight increases. So so all that goes into it. Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, it's that fine balancing thing that I don't think a lot of people take into consideration when they're sitting at their dining room tables going, I could do a Kickstarter. I should just start this thing. But as they research it, hopefully they'll realize that, so that they don't get themselves into trouble when it comes to succeeding at Kickstarter and then having trouble fulfilling it. Right. So I've talked to a whole bunch of people. I've done exactly what you said you wish you had done more of. I followed probably 15, 16, going on 25 now projects at the $1 level, just to see the updates, and because I'm interested, or because I've interviewed them here, and I want to kind of follow along and see what's going on. So while I am not psychic, and I am not going to pull anything out of my hat, I've become slightly better than 50% at guessing where Kickstarters are going to end. And based on what I've seen so far with your Kickstarter, and based on the reaction that I've seen online in the online communities, I'm going to make a prediction that you're going to reach the $29,000 level 4 stretch goal. That's going to be my prediction, and it's going to be a run at the very end of the Kickstarter, and you're going to shoot right past that goal.
That's what I hope, because we have a lot of other goals planned after that as well. There's a number of different ways we're going to expand this game after we get to that $29,000 goal, including probably adding another player or 2 to the game as well. So we hope to get there.
Oh, and I should mention, the game plays 2 to 6 players, correct?
That's right, yeah.
So it's also great for me as well, because when I do get a bunch of people together, it's nice to find a game that doesn't stop at 4. It's nice to find a nice, inclusive, fun game as well. So where can folks find you online? If they're obviously, you can go to Kickstarter and search for Antidote, and you're going to be right there. But if they wanted to find you elsewhere on the web, where would they find you?
Well, Facebook's a good place to go. We have Bellwether Games on Facebook, as well as there's a page for Antidote on Facebook, so you can like or follow either one of those pages. I would urge you to go to bellwethergames.com. You can misspell it if you'd like, and you'll still end up there. And one of the things that we're looking for are more people to subscribe to the newsletter, which you can find at the website. That's just our most direct way of getting in touch with people that are interested in Bellwether stuff. You can also find us on Twitter at Bellwether Games. where we have about 1,500 followers there. So been working on that since 2011 and been pretty pleased with the number that have followed us on that. We're also on Google Plus, obviously. And you can also email me directly if you email info@bellwethergames.com or dennis@bellwethergames.com. Both will get to me if you're interested in asking any questions that you'd like.
Excellent. Well, we're almost done here, but I have one question that I always ask all of my guests at the end of my podcast. For me, playing games is a social thing. I sit down with other people to enjoy their company and play the games. I enjoy the games as well, but the two always go together. And sure, you can do online gameplay and what have you, but I really prefer face-to-face gaming where you can sit down and joke and have fun and criticize each other's strategies and critique and see what's going on.
Yeah.
The other thing for me that makes something a social occasion is food. So when you sit down to game with your buddies, with your partner, with your wife, with whoever it is you're gaming with, what do you consider the ideal gaming snack?
Oh, there's so many.
Or beverage, or both.
That's one of the ways we draw people in. I think probably one thing that comes to mind is my wife makes this chocolate praline cake, which is kind of a unique cake. A lot of people haven't eaten it, but it's delicious, and it doesn't topple over on the game pieces. And it goes great with coffee or milk. So whenever you have a game group over at night, that's usually what I ask or plead to be made, and it's always delicious. Other than that, chips and salsa are pretty good. Cookies are great. Those are probably the top three that we use. We had pita chips the other day. That was good too.
Excellent. Yeah, I like the drier foods that aren't coated with cheese-like substance either, because people get that on my games and then I get it.
Me too.
All right, well, I want to thank you very much for coming on Indie Talks, and I would wish you all the success with Antidote, but you're already succeeding, so I wish you even more success.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we'll get up to that $29,000 stretch goal, because I want all the goodies that come along with it.
And I'd love to show you all the stretch goals that are after it.
Absolutely, Dennis. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.